angle in order to use law of sine.
An angle and the side across.
An angle and the side across from it. So law of sines is sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. And the big letter is a what? An angle, and the little letter is a side. And you're using 2 of the 3 of these at a time. So you may be using A and B, cross multiplying, or you may be using B and C or whatever. So 1 and 2 were already set up for you. I was just wanting you to practice putting it in the calculator. All right, so make sure you've got your big calculator. I'm going to pull the calculator up, and we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to get 3 sine 68 equals x sine 37. Are we looking for an angle measure or a side length?
A side length.
A side length. So we're not using inverse sine. So we're going to divide by sine 37. So x equals 3 sine 68 over sine 37. Now, if it were me, in my calculator, I would hit Control Divide. And we're using regular sine. So you're not using inverse for any of this. For this problem. When are we using inverse? When you're finding an angle. We're not finding an angle. So Control Divide. 3 sine 68 divided by sine 37. You need to make sure you're in degrees. And what do you get?
Wait, don't say it, don't say it.
Oh, it's awkward.
Oh, somebody just said don't say it.
I didn't say it.
I'm talking to the other one.
Brantley, where are we at on a calculator?
Oh, it's on the way.
Awesome.
It's on the way.
It's on the way.
All right, what did we get?
3.0.
3.
4.6.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Really good.
Looks like
I've heard 4.62 and I've heard 3.07.
4.62.
He's wrong.
Okay, 4.62. So, first of all, Charlie, you need to make sure that you're in degrees, not radians. And second of all, you need to make sure you didn't actually type, 65 instead of 68 or something like that. Okay, number 2, are we looking for a side length or an angle measure? Okay, so we're going to have to use inverse sine on this one. So we're going to divide by 8. So sine x equals 3.75 sine 24 over 8. So to type this in the calculator, when you are looking for an angle measure, we're going to hit inverse sine, Control Divide, and then we're going to type this fraction in the calculator. So when I type this fraction, I'm doing regular sine. So inverse sine, because we're looking for an angle measure. And then Control Divide. And when you type it in your calculator, we're doing regular sine. Sine negative 1. Henry, I feel like you can't see back here. Remember the other day when you were having troubles? You're not going to move up. And so 3.75 sine 24 divided by 8. Now, if I'm rounding to the nearest 100, I'm leaving it as what? 100.
10.99.
10.99. If I asked you to round to the nearest 10, You'd have to do 11.0 because it would round it up. Yes.
So, seeing the problem where it says like 3.75,
Uh-huh.
is that the side?
Yes.
So do you put sides
Wait, what's
on the
the
bottom and angles on the top?
Yeah, because sine of A, that has to be an angle measure.
Or 11.0.
We're rounding to the 100th, 10.99. But if I asked you to round to the 10th, you would have to round it up to 11.0. All right, let's go to 5. So 5 would be more like what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to solve a triangle. So go down to 5. 10.99. Remember how I said you can't see back there? It's right there. 10.99. And I said you can't see back there. All right. Now, we have not used other letters besides ABC. If it freaks you out to have other letters, then change it to ABC. I don't care how you do it. All right, so we're doing triangle KLM. Little m is 10.5. So little m is going to be across from big M. So this is 10.5. Little k is 18.2. And big K is 73. We have an angle measure and the side across from it. So we're going to say sine 73 over what?
18.2.
18.2 equals, yes,
Sine M over 10.5.
sine M over 10.5. You can't take the sine of a side length. You're taking the sine of an angle measure.
So do you inverse for these because we're looking for an angle?
Yes. So cross multiply. So we're going to have 10.5 sine 73 over 18, nope, sorry, equals 18.2 sine M. We're going to divide by what?
18.2.
18.2. So in your calculator, I want you to type sine -1, 10.5 sine 73 over 18.2. You use the inverse sine first because you're looking for an angle measure. Control divide. 10.5 regular sine 73 over 18.2.
Do you put 0.0 at the end?
Oh, the end of what?
The answer.
No.
No.
You do
What's
the
the
answer.
Well, I got a different version
Jay, what's the answer?
So your angle measure is 33.48. So that's going here. 33.48. Now, am I finished for what it asks for in the
Yes.
problem?
Not
Yes. But let's keep going. So what if I wanted to find angle L? What would I do?
You gotta add and subtract.
Add them together, subtract from 180. So we're going to add 73 plus 33.48. Subtract from 180, and what would I get? 73 plus 33.48. Add them together, subtract from 180, and what would I get?
73.52.
73.52. Henry, where's your big calculator, sweet precious dumpling. And then if I wanted to find little l, I would do what?
If you guys find equation for L equals the easy sign.
You would have to set up a law of sines again. Okay? Hey, that's all great and good. But there's going to be times where you don't have an angle measure and the side across from it. So we don't get to use law of sines. So I would like for you to keep this out, go to your little star sheet, and turn to the side that says cosine rule. Can y'all stop with the erasers? So some people write out like, what do we have to have? Well, if you don't have an angle measure and the side across from it, then you have to use law of cosines. So if you have an angle measure and the side across from it, then you may use law of sines. Otherwise, you have to use law of cosines.
So we need to know what? The angle side and side measure.
The angle measure and the sine across.
If you have an angle measure and the side across from that angle, you can use law of sines. If you don't have that, then you have to use law of cosines.
If you had just an angle and the side across from it, how would you find
Yeah.
the other stuff?
You wouldn't, I'm saying. But
That's what
if
you
I
have.
gave
You
you
have another
all
angle.
3 angles, then I can't use law of sines. All right, there are 3 versions of law of cosines. We're going to write all 3 down. If you know one, you're going to know the other 2. Okay? Because they match. You just put the letters in a different place. Okay? All right, so the first version of law of cosines is a squared equals b squared plus c squared. Does that look a little familiar
Very
to you?
familiar.
Kind of like Pythagorean theorem, except for Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Minus 2bc cosine. What letter has not been used twice?
A.
A. Cosine A. A squared equals b squared plus c squared
There's like the quadratic formula.
minus 2bc cosine A.
But these are the sides, not the angles, right?
Yeah, is it meant to be?
The little letters are the sides. Big letters are angles. You can't take the cosine of a side length.
So they're all sides except for this
Yes.
one. Which one of those B is the big B? Or do not have a big B?
We don't have a big B. So our next one would be b squared equals, what do you think?
A squared plus c squared minus 2.
It's just the same thing, but the A and the
Yeah. Minus 2ac.
What does that say cosine what of B?
I'm gonna say this one starts with C squared.
Who got it first? I bet.
Quite the gander, Ellie.
That's something.
Or say
Now, if you know one version, then you know the other 2. You're just rearranging the letters. You're going to pick which version you use based on what you're looking for or what you're given. When you get to 11th grade and you are doing law of cosine, you have what is called an ambiguous case. Ambiguous cases mean
You can't do it.
Dylan can work it one way and Emma can work it a different way, and they would get the same, they would work it correctly and get two different answers. So, in my class, you will not have any ambiguous cases. So, if A, you Google law of cosine problems to work, or B, you have a tutor and you are working law of cosines, I'm not giving you any ambiguous cases. Okay? So, draw you a triangle over here. And it says, find the remaining sides and angles of triangle ABC if little b is 13. So I'm going to do A, B, C. Little b is 13. Big A is 42. And little c is 11. Do I have an angle measure and the side across from it? No, so we have to use law of cosine. Now looking at what we're given, we have little b, we have little c, and we have big A. Which version of the law of cosine should we use? The first one. Because we've got only one angle measure, which is A. So we have to use the one that says cosine A. So A squared equals, we don't have A squared.
I thought we did.
No, we got big A.
B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine 42. And I'm going to let you get all that written down before we put it in our calculator.
What?
You have got to follow order of operations. If you type it in your calculator all together, it will follow the order of operations for you. So I'm going to take and I'm going to type all of this in the calculator at one time.
So the b that we squared is different from the b and the 2bc?
No,
So then why did we use 13?
because that's what B equals. I used 13 in two places.
Is that a big B or a 13 after the 2?
It's a.
That's a 13.
Oh.
Parker?
Can you have a square root? Can you have a cosine under a square root?
Yes. All right, so I'm typing all of this in at one time.
Does the calculator automatically do the order of operations?
Yes. So I did 13 squared plus 11 squared minus 2 times 13 times 11. And I went ahead and did times cosine 42.
275. Oh, is it positive or negative? It's
Can we have a negative
Yeah.
side length?
No.
Okay, so I got 77.46. 77.46. Is that what little a equals?
No.
What is that?
The square.
A squared. So we have to take the square root. So what I would like for you to do, some of you may have done it in the square root to begin with, but you're going to hit Control X squared. That's going to give me a radical. Control X squared. But I want what's up here under the radical. I don't want to round.
The control and then click like the
Control answer. So Control X squared, Control answer. That takes what is up above there and puts it underneath the radical.
Wait, I don't see answer.
It's where the little minus is,
So
under the
above
3.
The negative.
Control x squared.
Where is it?
Baby, do you see the 3?
A 3, yes.
Do you see the negative button underneath it?
Yes.
Do you see ANS above that? And then we're going to hit enter. We get 8.80. So that is little a. So little a equals 8.80. Okay, so we need little a, and then we need angle B, and we need angle C. Do we now have an angle measure and the side across from it?
Yes.
So what can we do?
Science.
Switch to law of sines. You can do law of cosines again if you really wanted to and solve for an angle measure, but law of sines is really easier. So if we switch to law of sines now, so I'm going to say sine A over A. Y'all want to do for B or C? It doesn't matter.
B.
B. So sine B over 13. All right, I'm going to give you a second to solve that. So sine A over A equals sine B over B.
We found an angle?
I don't know, you tell me.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
We are.
And I want you to round to the 10th. I mean, the 100th, excuse me. Round to the 100th.
A 100?
100th, yeah. Okay. Do we have an answer?
We do.
We do have an answer.
What'd you get?
81.30.
81.3.
81.25 is what I got.
How is it 81?
Because if you put in your answer from the last one, if you put it in unrounded, it gives you a different answer.
So what did you get with 8? Shh. What did you get when you typed in 8.8?
81.23. Oh.
Rounded would be
That makes sense.
81.30?
You had to type 8.8.
Well, it was two. It was 2 9.
Yeah.
2 9.
So
So 88.30. So if you typed in 8.8, you got 81.30. If you went up and typed in like the actual answer from the top, like I went and copied and pasted the 8.80117, you got 8.25. Now, I am letting you round, okay? So if you had gotten on this one 8.30, I would have counted it correct because there's a lot happening, and especially if you don't have a big calculator on the day of the test, it's real difficult to plug in your exact answer.
What day is this? Is it
Next week. Okay. So that's now angle B. Now I'm going to use the 81.25 because that is the exact. But if you got the 81.30, that is okay. And then to get C, what do I need to do?
Same thing, but we'll see.
Same thing.
Do I have to do some law of sine again?
Just add them together.
Just add them together, subtract from 180. So 81.25 plus 42, subtract from 180. and you should get 56.75.
Like, you won't count off if you're like 100 off, but you really.
So I'm letting you round these, so I won't count off if you would put 181.30. Okay, we are going to change the numbers on this second example. Okay, so I'm actually going to use ABC. Okay.
So you're changing the numbers in.
Well, yeah, I'm just going to use ABC because I think it's easier when we first start doing this to use ABC. There's a lot happening with these equations. So I'm going to give you that little a is 37, little b is 18, and little c is 23.
Don't you need a big
So what do we not have?
The big ones.
An angle measure. All I gave you were side lengths. So that means we can technically use any of the ones at the top, and we're going to be looking for what?
Big.
an angle?
An angle. So we're going to have to solve for an angle. So just to be easy, I'm going to solve for cosine A. So we're going to use our very first equation. Technically, you can use any one you want because you have three sides. You're looking for an angle measure. Now, the math on this is important. The order of operations is important. All right, so we're going to plug it into the top. So we're going to say A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine A. So we'll give you a second to write that down. So A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine A. Now the other one we did, we got to type it all in the calculator at one time. We don't get to do that here. So I'm going to ask individual so I don't have to hear like 75 answers. So Emma Reeves, tell me what 37 squared is.
1,369.
Parker Page, tell me what 18 squared is. Charlie Norris, tell me what 23 squared is.
29.
Robert, tell me what 2 times 18 times 23 is.
828.
What is 828 doing to cosine A? Multiplying. So we've got to follow order of operations here. Okay? So first of all, we need to combine like terms. Okay? Because this is being multiplied by this. So let's combine like terms here. Okay, so this would be 1369 equals, Billy, what is 324 plus 529? 853? 853 minus 828 cosine A. Can you subtract these two numbers? No. That's no different than 853 minus 828x.
We can subtract 1369.
So we need to move this 853 over.
Subtract 8.
Okay? So what is Henry. 1369 minus 853.
516.
So 516 equals negative 828 cosine A. Bless you.
Thank you.
And now what do we need to do with 828?
Divide.
Divide. So we're going to now have cosine A equals
It's a negative.
516 over negative 828.
Wait, you can do that?
So
Negative.
we're looking for what?
Cosine.
An angle.
An angle. So what do we type in the calculator?
Negative cosine.
Inverse cosine. So inverse cosine, control divide, 516 over negative 828.
What does that say?
And that says to me 128.55. So angle A, so we're looking for angle A, angle B, and angle C.
Sine is sine.
So 128.55.
That was his.
So now we're gonna do it all the way again for B or C.
Well, hold on. Do we now have an angle measure in the side across
And
from
do
it?
sine. Do sine.
So now you can switch to law of sine.
Wait, I think I just cosine the whole way through.
So right here where I switch to law of sine. So once I now have this, go ahead and do sine A over 8. Let's all do B, so we're all working the same one.
Can we do it in the calculator too?
So, what do you mean will I do it?
Up there.
I
We
will.
use the law of sine.
But I want you to set it up, okay? So I want you to do I want you to do sine A over A equals sine B over B. And plug it in and cross multiply. Friendly. So this doesn't make any sense to you right now. However, the reason it's not negative when I do negative is because
Wait, I'm confused.
because you asked me it was negative. You said, can we have a negative? And then fraction.
No,
It's okay.
no, Brantley, oh no.
So
I did something wrong.
this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. And this is actually on a circle. And when I'm here, both of these are positive, right? But when I'm over here, this is negative positive. This is negative negative, and positive negative. So this triangle cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And so it's when your triangle is drawn in this type of place. So even though my fraction is negative, the angle's not. Does that make sense? When you did sine, did you get a negative? Didn't you say I accidentally typed sine?
Yeah, actually.
Did you get a negative or positive?
I got undefined.
No, that's awkward.
No, Robert.
Wait, is it do sine negative one or not?
Are you looking for an angle measure or not, babe?
Yeah,
You do.
I think I am.
Okay. You think you are?
It says undead.
It could be the user. So sine A, so sine 128.55 over little a, which was 37, equals sine B over, B is 18, right? Okay, so Elliot, when I set this up, I'm going to cross multiply. That's going to be 18 sine 128.55 equals 37 sine B. 37 is multiplying, so I'm going to divide. So in my calculator, I'm looking for an angle measure, so I do sine negative 1. Then I'm going to do control divide. 18 sine 128.55 over 37. Robert, what did you do wrong?
I didn't put like I did just the equation. If that makes sense.
Not the sine negative 1.
I didn't put like that it equals. I did that thing.
Okay, so Elliot, inverse sine, then this is regular sine that I'm typing in. And I get
Right.
22.36.
22
Now, this is not, these aren't angles. So can I add them together and subtract from 180? Wait, these are angles.
They
Never
are
mind, I
angles.
just lied. These are angles. So can I add them together and subtract from 180?
Yes.
Yes. So,
You'll take like the other answer.
yes. And then add them together and subtract from 180. And tell me what you get. 29 point what?
Oh wait, no.
Okay. So what I would like for you to do, we're now going to go back to this sheet that you did 1, 2, and 5 on. And the first thing we're going to do is 3 and 4, where we are like just solving. Where I put everything in there, all you're having to do is put it in the calculator. I feel like Trip is like peering at us over the. Okay, so number 3. I want you to work through number 3 and try to put it in your calculator correctly. And we're going to check it in just a minute. We're doing number 3. All we're doing is trying to put it in the calculator correctly.
How do you do the equal sign?
Baby. Baby.
You don't. What do you need the equal sign for?
We don't.
Never mind.
Okay. Have we ever typed an equal sign in the
I
calculator?
don't even know.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You can do systems of equations.
You can.
You can do like 10 different ones.
We've also never typed an X in the calculator. So you're solving this by hand, just like we did on the star sheet, and trying to get us an answer.
Oh, yeah, this is right.
Give us just a couple more minutes and then we'll go over it. Okay, so what is 23 squared?
529.
529. Now, you can go ahead and do 37 squared plus 18 squared and just get that one number. So what is 37 squared plus 18 squared? 1693.
What'd you do? Did you just go
37 squared plus 18 squared.
And it's minus 1332.
So 2 times 37 times 18 is 1332.
Cosine. You divide.
Okay, so we're going to divide next or subtract next?
You subtract.
Subtract.
And then you
So we're going to subtract 1693. So 529 minus 1693 is what?
1164.
64?
You gotta do negative
Wow,
cosine.
yeah, I messed up.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
That's what I did.
Maybe.
How do we know?
Then what?
How do we know?
Divide. So we're going to do cosine negative 1. Since both of these are negative, doesn't that mean that basically they're both positive?
Yep.
But you can put them in as negatives if you want. Brantley said, how do we know we're looking for an angle measure?
I mean, like, how would we know if it was?
Well, what is always behind the word cosine? An angle. We can't take the cosine of a side length. So we know that if it's after cosine, we're looking for an angle measure. So we're doing inverse cosine. Elliot, do you think you got this one right?
Well, I do know.
Robert, do we know now that we're not going to type an equal sign?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. 29.09. 29.09. Okay, now you're going to work number 4. On number 4, are you looking for a side length or an angle measure?
Side
Side
length.
length.
A side length. So there should not be any inverses being typed. Elliot?
Mhm.
I have
Not funny, really. Thank you.
Who's Jackson? Is that you?
That doesn't sound
That doesn't sound like you.
Alright, I'm gonna send you this video.
Jackson, do you have any glue? 4.
You,
No, we're not. We're on 6. We're on 4.
you seem to have
We're
a nicer
doing number
tone in that
4.
picture. Did you pick up on that? Okay.
Really just put it on.
I'm not lying.
Is this the one where we just put everything in?
I've
Yeah,
done
just
it
put it
before.
on.
No, but then you gotta,
Hey,
you
what'd
know
you
what
do?
they say, you gotta do the square.
So you want me to send this to you or not?
Thank you, that's
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
Well, you know they say for the square root,
You gotta do it.
you gotta square them.
Nice.
Good job, Billy.
Sorry, I got you.
No problem.
What'd you get?
I'm on
Don't
myself.
tell me. Don't tell me, don't tell me.
Did any of your songs have Valentine's?
Well, their mama gave you a Valentine's gift.
Oh,
That's wrong.
Let's go.
How?
I
I
bet
did
your
the
grandma
same
got you a
thing.
Valentine's gift.
She didn't. She texted me though.
I bet she did.
That's good. That's wrong. How?
You wanna hear? You wanna read the championship?
I did the same.
I don't.
I literally
I
just
wish
typed
you
it on.
would've
But how do you?
I think I got number 4.
I have the chart detail.
Okay.
So easy.
Alright, so we're working number 4. We are looking for a side length. So you can type all of this in the calculator. And then you can take the square root. Or you can take you can like type it all in under the square root. Parker, is that what you're doing? So if you want to type it under the radical, that's fine. If you don't want to type it under the radical, okay, you three have got to stop. If you don't want to type it under the radical, then type it in as it is.
Good.
Then you're going to take the square root. So control x squared, control answer.
Yeah, that definitely means it's not.
I tried to do it like
It's
that.
on his last
It was empty. Did he type something pressure and something?
So you should have got 9.17.
Hey, Jay, could you give my
Jack, the
calculator?
next time you don't finish your quiz and you want to sit in here because you don't know what you're doing, please don't ask me to stay. Yes.
Could you hand me my calculator still?
Are your legs right?
You
All right.
championship game this year.
So
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
let's now go to one where you've got to determine whether you are using law of sines or law of cosines. So at the top, we were just practicing putting it in the calculator. And on the quiz and the test, I'm not going to say to you, we're going to use law of sines for this. You have to determine what you're going to use. So I want you to go to number 6. I would draw a triangle and label it. And then I want you to determine what you're going to use, law of sines or law of cosines. Draw a picture.
Number 6.
Number 6.
I think I started it.
Cosine 59. Because think about whenever you're multiplying, nothing under here will ever be negative. So then yes, you've done something wrong.
Miss Jackson. What happened after you left work? After that, my phone.
Okay, for number 6, are we using law of sines or law of cosines? Law of sines. So I'm drawing my picture here. K, L, M. This is 31. This is 88. And this is 5.4. Right this second, do I have an angle measure in the side across from it?
Nope.
No, but what should I do?
Get
Add
180.
You can
Add them
the
together and
angles,
subtract from 180. So that would give me angle M, which is 61. Now I have an angle measure in the side across from it. This is only wanting little l. So sine 61 over 5.4 equals sine 88 over x. Cross multiply. So x sine 61 equals 5.4 sine 88. Now what do we need to do?
Divide by sine 61.
Divide by sine 61. So in the calculator, 5.4 sine 88 over sine 61. These are looking for a side length, so there's no inverses in there. And what did you get?
Wait, do we put like times
Six
sign,
point-
regular sign?
6 point what?
1/7.
1/7.